Unacceptable. Unacceptable. That's the word. That is the only fitting word for West Virginia's loss to Ohio State in Cleveland. That's the term. That's what fans should be saying right now. That's how the players should feel, and that's how the coaching staff should feel. They played their butts off. They 100% did, especially Honor Huff. They were in that game all the way through, but they also blew a 16-point lead and blew multiple leads in the extra sessions. Mental mistakes, almost losing it in regulation, then almost losing it in overtime, and then they do lose in double overtime. And at the end of the day, West Virginia is going to finish out 2025 and the out of conference schedule without any quality victories at all. Pitt might be an emotional win, and yeah, it was a blowout, and yes, that's positive. Doesn't mean much based on what Pitt's been doing since. Pitt even lost today. I mean, again, Pitt is so far gone from the national conversation that they almost have to win out in ACC play in the new year to even be relevant. Their metrics are horrendous. They're done. That is not a quality victory for anybody outside of Mountaineer Nation and in their heart. And you blow a game to Clemson, you lose to Wake Forest in Charleston, even though not in Morgantown, but in West Virginia, in Charleston. And then you lose this game when, yes, it's in Cleveland. You could argue more of a home court advantage for them, even though it's not in Columbus, but it's only a couple of hours for people that are West Virginia fans if you're in Morgantown or Pittsburgh or anywhere close by. And there's always Mountaineer fans. It was a solid Mountaineer contingent there. And West Virginia had a 16-point lead. So that's enough for me to say you can't lose that one. And that's an Ohio State team that lost to Pitt, even though by a buzzer beater. So it's an average Ohio State team that's been a roller coaster ride, similar to West Virginia. But now they kind of have a quality win, unless you don't count it because West Virginia is not quality. I guess that's an argument now. They move up in Ken Palm, but they're still barely in the top 70. And again, you had to have that one, especially with that lead. You don't get it. So that's the opening rant session here on this post-game show. West Virginia loses. They fall 89-88 in double overtime to Ohio State in Cleveland. A heartbreaker, especially for Honor Huff, who played well enough to win on his own, but do they have enough around him? And another bad loss. No quality wins here in out-of-conference play. They'll have another one, but they got to do a lot in Big 12 play to even be on the bubble this year. Mike Asti, and I'm now going to be joined by Luke Blain. And we already do see we have a few here in the chat. I am home covering this at home. Luke, also at home in Parkersburg, covering this. The weather didn't really allow us to get to Cleveland. Family things didn't allow us to get to Cleveland, but I guess we missed a thrilling game, but one West Virginia lost, and I can't imagine what that locker room is like right now. Luke, your vantage point, I just opened up this post-game show kind of ranting. Maybe calmer heads can prevail here. What what are your thoughts after that one? Obviously, they played well at times, but at the end of the day, they lose.
Yeah, well, the second half offense is becoming a major issue, and there's no working around that in terms of when you're assessing this team. There was I counted it up, a 4 minute and 53 seconds, so we'll just call it a 5 minute stretch where they did not score a field
Yeah.
goal. And there were some free throws mixed in there. I think in total they earned about 7 points, but it included that stretch where there was the technical foul and then the foul that preceded that in the media timeout. But whenever you can't put the ball in the hoop and
Yeah.
you have a 16-point lead, the other team's going to catch up eventually with 10 minutes left in the second half, specifically a P4 team. Maybe you can get by with that kind of stuff against your lower levels of play whenever you're playing Mississippi Valley State here in about a week, but that didn't cut it tonight for WVU. So I it's a hard loss to look at because you look down the stat line, you think that everything that lines up
Yeah.
for WVU minus the turnovers is good. And there were some really bad turnovers there for WVU, specifically down the stretch and in the second half. Brennan Lorient went 3 for 3 from 3-point range, and Jasper Floyd went 2 of 2. You have 5 threes between those two. Huff went 5 for 13, scored one late in the first half, gave WVU, I think it was a 10-point lead at half. So I mean, you can point at the defense, you can say this team's identity is in defense, but you've got to find a way to score in the second half. You
Yeah.
cannot score on defense. And I just saw, the comment of points in the paint is a major issue. There was a point in the second half where WVU didn't have a layup. Like I was following the StatCast. They had
Yeah.
no baskets that counted as layups according to
I mean,
the
I
StatCast.
have it right here. 54-20 in points on the paint advantage, Ohio State. And
Yeah.
as much as Ross Hodge is a great defensive mastermind, that's his calling card. And this team, even in losses, has played well defensively and was, for the most part, in this game. At the end of regulation, in the first overtime, and certainly towards the end of the game in the second overtime, you can make an argument that while they were good defensively, that they also had some really boneheaded fouls, unnecessary fouls, and then they couldn't stop Ohio State once they got to the paint. You could argue, Luke, that if Ohio State implored their end of game strategy of basically just living in the paint throughout
Yep.
this whole game, they would have won in a blowout because West Virginia no longer could handle the paint work. So while it's a good defensive team, if you're getting destroyed 54-20 to an average team in the paint, and yeah, they have bigs, including one that was in foul trouble late, but West Virginia does too. And the problem also is outside of, Harlan, Obioha, they are a small team, so they can't handle size. But that's a good defensive team that could not handle anybody in the paint. So is that a great defensive effort? Really? Because the team you're facing had bigs and they were trying to live in the paint. So you're a good defense, but you couldn't handle what they were doing. I mean, that's an issue too. Obviously, they
There
lost
was a
because the offense cratered out. But I
yeah.
don't know if the defense was the best Ross Hodge has ever put together at the end, unless they just got tired. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah, well, there's also a major issue of there was a lack of defensive adjustments when it came to Bruce Thornton. I mean,
Yeah.
go back and watch the game and see how many times Bruce Thornton just drove into the middle, pulled up from the paint, and scored. I'm going to read you his scoring lines from throughout this game. Had 2 points in the second half, or in the first half, excuse me. In the second half, he had 10. That is going, or well, in the second half, he only had 7. So that is 9
That's
points
9. Yeah.
through regulation. In overtime, he had 12 between
Right.
both overtime periods.
Yeah.
More than double
Over
his
20.
scoring. He
He
had
almost
21
got the
points
Huff.
on
He
the day.
almost was the leading scorer of the game. As insane
Yeah,
as that
exactly.
sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that was just a major issue that stood out because that's where all their buckets came from in the
Yeah.
second in overtime specifically. And WVU had some great plays. I mean, Honor Huff made that turnaround from the corner. Brennan Lorient made that top of the key three. Honor Huff scored all of WVU's points in that first overtime period,
Yeah.
which I think is also, I mean, as great as Honor Huff is, it's exposing a bigger problem in
That's
that nobody
yeah.
else is stepping up for WVU to score. And it becomes more glaringly obvious when Eagle staff is not there and he's not
Yeah.
making the plays that they brought him in to make. I think
And
that
we,
that it's becoming a problem. I mean,
yeah,
we
well,
weren't,
it's 100% becoming a problem, and you could
yeah,
argue it's already been a problem. But this game
yeah,
exposed it more than any other game. And we actually talked on our last Mountaineer report that it would be interesting to watch Eagle staff's minutes in this game. So he played half the minutes of basically the top players who were top transfers on this team, and he was supposed to be one of the top transfers and leading scorers. He only played 20 minutes. Floyd, Huff, Lorient, everyone's 40 plus in terms of similar players. Obviously, Obioha was 23. Fields even had 28. I mean, Eagle staff was basically not utilized and was irrelevant once they got out of regulation. And yes, he's been up and down this year. He's been struggling offensively, even though he had all those big games at a lower level last year. But he usually was at least giving them something defensively. That didn't happen a couple games ago. He got benched. Ross Hodge admitted it. It came back in their last game, granted not against the Power 4 competitor. And then here, in Cleveland, which we said this kind of is the game that could determine how much you play him in Big 12 play, because they're all quality games. And he had 5 points, 3 assists, 2 boards in 20 minutes of action. And he has just simply not been good enough. Even if you're saying you got to grade him on a curve because he's coming from a lower level and he's now playing with other scores, I'm honestly not even liking that excuse anymore, because this offense is struggling so much. How many scorers is he playing with? Right now he's playing with Honor Huff. So you got to share the rock with Honor Huff. But if Eagle staff can start hitting some shots, then give it to him. You don't have to be so selfless that you're worrying about somebody else getting their shots because they're such a great scorer. Nobody has been a great scorer on this team game in and game out, except for Honor Huff. And you could even argue, Luke, that while Honor Huff gets tons of credit for this effort, they would have totally blown this game and wouldn't have been in overtime without him. Certainly wouldn't have got to the second overtime without him. Some of the shots he was hitting were ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like he was basically taking some Steph Curry shots, and Steph Curry can take them, but for Honor Huff and really anybody else, they're really bad shots, quote unquote bad shots. Now, maybe not for him because he's hitting them, but to live and die off of those shots is really risky. So if those shots don't fall, they're not even in the second overtime.
Exactly.
And then Honor Huff doesn't even have 20 points. And then you got him with like 18 and they lose in regulation or lose in the first overtime. And this looks even worse. Maybe they don't jump up in Ken Palm. They got lucky he even hit those. Really.
And that was a major problem for me in Wake Forest. Like for the Wake Forest game, I think that issue was that Wake Forest game, I think that issue was even more glaringly like front and center than it was in this one, because sorry, cat's coming up. So sorry, she wants to join in.
I can have some commenters here jump in. And I figured this was have some action here with us both home, so why not do this? Eagle staff is overrated again. I'm sure Hodge will get upset, but it's hard to defend him right now. It really, really is. The team is composed of NIT players, no lockdown defensive players. I think the first part's fair. The second part, I don't know. The first part, I will say, and I was probably the most critical media member in existence of the Ross Hodge hire initially, and I admit it, I came around, and I do think he's a great guy and a great coach, and maybe he could fix this. But the question I asked him at his intro presser is now fair to hold on him unless he somehow turns this around in Big 12 play, because it was basically to say, look, Ross, this is not your fault that a Hall of Fame coach with 900 plus wins in the Basketball Hall of Fame had some, judgment errors and maybe has an issue, and that cost the season. It's not the fault of yours that Josh Eiler put together arguably the worst season in program history, and it's not your fault that Darren DeVries got screwed out of the tournament when he should have got there, and then he left town in drama. None of that is your fault, Ross Hodge. However, and I didn't tell him all this, but that's just reality. However, the pressure is that you need to get back in the NCAA tournament. The fans are not going to wait around. This cannot be a trust the climb, take 2-3 years to even get in the NCAA tournament. You can't do it. The fans are going to stop going to games, and then you're going to be broke. You cannot do it. Cannot. Ren Baker opens up his pressers talking, especially basketball, talking about the history. He literally opened up the Ross Hodge intro saying, we have 31 NCAA tournament appearances. We have more than some other programs out there that get more national respect. We should have made this last tournament. Here's our lineage. Well, you got to start playing like it. And again, it's not fair to hold on Ross Hodge. This is year one for him, but he defended to my face and other media members' faces, but even on a one-on-one when I talked to him over the summer, that yes, there's no Power 4 transfer here. There's no star here, but there are players that other Power 4 teams wanted, which I agree is true. Eagle staff's won, and those schools probably are thrilled they didn't pay him money because he's not getting it done right now. But if you don't have that guy that was even put together last year with Javon Small when they should have made the tournament, they spent for that guy last year, they didn't this year, then there's pressure on to get those wins. And if you lose these big games, especially blowing them, like Clemson and Ohio State in particular, at least get one of them. But to lose both of those and blow those and then lose to Wake at home and just have Pitt as your lone Power 4 win and out of conference play, then it's fair to say all you did was elevate players from lower levels. There's no real big game players. These players are underachieving outside of Huff. And this maybe is a good defensive team, but not nearly enough offensively. You should have spent for a power four player. Otherwise, you are building an NIT roster, or certainly not an NCAA tournament roster. At least, who knows whether you want to be in the NIT or not. But that's the team that he had last year at North Texas. So that is fair. I do think this is a little bit of an aberration in terms of defensive issues with a big team in overtime and the second overtime in particular. For the most part this year, if you look at the metrics, this is a good defensive team. Hodge is a good defensive coach, and they are buying in defensively. So I don't think it's fair to say they're just awful defensively because of one bad half or two. But roster-wise, I think it's 100% fair. I don't know. You could argue if they end up not even on the bubble, did they build this the right way? Should they have focused more on offense? Did they need to get a power four player in there? Did they need more big game players actually with tournament experience outside of a bench player from FAU's run years ago? He said he didn't think so because they're all winners at any level and they're great players. If this doesn't turn around, all that criticism is fair to throw back at him now, 100%. And it's more of the same here from the commenters here. Absolutely. Would have to win 11 in Big 12 games to even have a thought at the tournament. Probably now, because there's not quality wins. I don't want to go to a number, but they're moving up in Ken Palm, but the quality wins are just not there. You got to start the next year way higher up in Ken Palm, at least have one or two more quality wins on the board. And it's hard to imagine they're going to clip off even the amount of big wins they had last year in Big 12 play, and that wasn't enough.
And I also think this game, I tweeted it out earlier, but this game isn't going to look as good on Ken Palm in the long run. I don't have faith that Ohio State's going to be one of those teams that's going to really come in and even really compete in the Big Ten. I just don't have faith. I think I see a lot of the same issues as I do in WVU's team when it comes to over reliance on one player for scoring down the stretch. We saw in the second half, that's when they turned it around, was whenever they got Bruce Thornton going. The turnovers, I mean, both teams just played a sloppy game to start out in this one. But you combine that, not even just excluding the fact that Ohio State lost to Pitt, you're looking at another team that you lost to that I'm not really sure is going to do too well down the stretch. So you got to take control of your own destiny in Big 12 play and go out there and get some wins. But that's going to be hard whenever you go to Iowa State to start the year. That's just good.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. That's why this win was so important. It could kind of make up for the Clemson issue. It still wouldn't have been a great out-of-conference schedule, but it would give you somewhat of a cushion that even if you are competitive but lose to Iowa State, at least because your record also has to be something to brag about. You're not going to get in with 15 wins and just say that you had a hard schedule. You got to get to a 17, 18 bar at minimum. 19 usually is the minimum bar, and that's how Huggins' last tournament team got in with a really tough schedule and mostly off the metrics when they had some losses mixed in. But I don't even know the path to get to 15, 16, 17 victories right now. They have 8 on the board, but they're going into a very tough conference schedule in the toughest conference in the country with arguably the best team coming up in game 1 once again on national TV. And if you look at even this game, if you get destroyed in points and paint, 54-20, if you lose your field goal percentage battle, 44.4 to 39.1, which, kind of is okay, but you're still losing that battle. And you lose in total rebounds, 38-36. I mean, without even watching, I'm not sure how you would possibly imagine winning that game. And then you do watch, and again, it sucks for Honor Huff. A great effort for him, a great effort for the team. They're not quitting on their coach, and obviously for the people in the chat already out on Ross Hodge. As much as I'm here for criticizing the roster, I did criticize the hire because of only 2 years of D1 head coaching experience. I'm not necessarily sold on him as the head coach for when this team ever gets back to where they should be and gets back to glory and where they were. However, there's a 0% chance he's getting fired after year 1, even if they lose out. So they're going to have to fix this with him, barring him leaving. And obviously he doesn't appear to be getting any promoted type of job if they don't fix this. So you're going to have Ross Hodge next year in all intents and purposes, and barring something wild. And he's not somebody who's going to, provide a scandal for you if that's what you're hoping for here. So he is the coach. He is the coach, and he is a good coach, and he's a good guy. But again, there's not a star player here to carry you unless you think Honor Huff is that guy. But Luke, I mean, and this was said on the broadcast, it's very difficult because even with Javon Small last year as the Lone Ranger, kind of when DeVries went down, he's a bigger body. It's very difficult for a player as small as Honor Huff. I mean, unless you're Steph Curry and Allen Iverson or something insane, it's very hard for that guy to have to score 25 and be the focal point of the offense and lead the way. They don't really have a secondary scorer that's been consistent, even if it was supposed to be Eagle staff. You could argue Fields. I mean, but it's hard. No one's been game in and game out that second guy. Obioha even was early in the season. But it's just hard for your engine to go off of somebody that small. Is that a problem for you? Could this actually be a season that totally goes down the drain if they don't find a secondary scorer? Is it an issue that Honor Huff is that top scorer? I mean, if going into the year, if somebody would have said, is this team better off with Eagle Staff emerging or Honor Huff emerging? Probably Eagle Staff. Honor Huff being that small and being your leading scorer and really your lone top scorer just is an issue with his size. It's not fair to him. I don't see how that works in the Big 12.
Yeah, and I mean the Big 12 is in general just a taller league, a taller,
Yeah,
more physical league,
but
more
I'm saying,
defensive-minded league, and that's what you're about to run into here with Honor Huff as your leading scorer. And I will say, I mean, I think Honor Huff, I don't feel like this is a controversial statement, is a better shooter than Javon Small and can make
yeah,
more contested shots than Javon Small.
yeah,
And I mean, it got him out of some it got him out of some issues tonight. It got him out of some issues against Wake Forest. Wake Forest, I think, is a better example of the offense just not being enough down the stretch. But I mean, when it comes down to it, you need more than Huff, and you need this to be the time where Eagle staff comes in, and you need some better play from your forwards down the stretch as well.
yeah,
And particularly at the 5 position, I didn't think that Harlan Obioha was particularly great tonight. Brennan Lorient had a good game, a lot of scoring from outside for him. And, he took some post mid ranges and made them. I thought,
yeah.
overall, I really did like the play from Brennan Lorient tonight. He had a couple turnovers that I didn't think were very good,
No, but they
but
would have been
over,
dead in the water earlier without
yes,
him. I mean,
yes,
100%. He
yes,
in the extra sessions, he was just as important as Honor Huff, and they were also just scoring off of free throws for a while. And Honor Huff, but
yeah,
Lorian was kind of the other option. They even were saying on the broadcast too that if you don't have a secondary score and you're trying to force one because Honor Huff's getting double coverage, Lorian's the only option it seemed who had any type of
yeah.
momentum behind him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really do wonder when you start to ask Jasper Floyd to carry more of a load on the offense in terms of scoring.
Yeah. Yeah. He had
Um,
14. Lorian had
Yeah, he did.
18, by the
He
way.
had a good start tonight. I mean, 2 for 2
Yeah.
from 3-point range, and I mean, he primarily has been that facilitator, but also it just, if Eagle staff isn't gonna score as consistently as you need him to, and if you can't get as much going down low in the post, you're gonna need your guards to step in. And Honor Huff is doing literally everything he possibly can.
It's
And
ridiculous. Yeah.
Chance Moore can get downhill. I mean, he made
Yeah.
10 free throws tonight. He was a
Chance
big
Moore was
play. I mean,
big as
yeah,
well.
just
Yep.
just
Chance
2 for
Moore
10 from the
had,
field, but he added 14 points.
but he almost had a
So
double, 14 points and 8 rebounds. I mean,
yes,
he was a beast for his role. I think the defense of Chance Moore too, because nobody was perfect. Chance Moore was brought onto this team to kind of be the 6th best player and to be a bench player and a
yeah,
spark plug. So if you could argue he's your 3rd best player in this game, that really is probably a recipe for a loss, even if it's not, again, not anything to say negatively about him, but you're not seeing the depth that you do against non-power 4 opponents. Early in the season, we were talking about DJ Thomas stepping up and being, one of their top players and leading them to some early season wins. Obviously, that's not, a relevant name from this game. You're not able to go as deep into the lineup and make up for other stars who aren't getting it done and have others maybe from the bench carry you against teams like this. And Ohio State, again, as you mentioned, is an up and down team. They're a roller coaster ride of a season. This might cancel out the loss to Pitt because it was a buzzer beater, but that's still a bad loss. I don't know if they're making the NCAA tournament, let alone this even that maybe they're going to lose this as a quality win, Luke. If what you're saying is true for West Virginia not holding this in Ken Palm, then it's going to burst both bubbles, and this is going to be the best game of the year that means nothing. I mean, that really could be the reality here. We'll see what they do, but when they don't have the ability to dominate in the paint and their bigs foul out, they seem like they're dead in the water. Their recipe, I mean, I'm not a coach here, but their recipe certainly in overtime in the overtime session seemed pretty easy. Even when they were, whether they were down, no matter what the time was on the clock, they were trying to go the paint. Yeah. Unlike West Virginia, who was just looking for all outside shots. That was, I mean, sometimes the other Huff would try to go and find somebody, but this also feels like this just feels like this whole thing is constructed poorly. And I don't mean that as much as even, okay, maybe you could argue it's put together okay, but the way the season's unfolding, Eagle staff kind of being irrelevant or inconsistent, he was supposed to probably be your best player. That was kind of even hinted by Ross Hodge, and it's not near the case. If Honor Huff is your second best scorer, this is a little better of a well-rounded team. And then he's a shooting guard who's really being forced to play point in this game when he can't do that. I mean, he had that mental lapse where he went out of bounds behind the basket. That doesn't happen.
I mean, that happened when they were up 1.
Yeah, right. That almost lost the game. I mean, if they did not get to overtime,
play.
That could have single-handedly lost this game, and that would have sucked because he was the best player out there. But if they would have lost in regulation because Ohio State had time, that would have been a decision that was on him. And you could even see Ross Hodges' face. Like he gave like a what? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
But you could argue that goes back to a little bit of coaching here, because even though Honor Huff is your only consistent force and he's your best player, whether he's undersized or not, he is not used to having the ball in his hands the entire possession. He's not used to calling shots. He's not a point guard. He's a shooting guard. This is not Steph Curry where he's the point. He is the shooting guard. So they made him a point for a few possessions, and then did you notice after that he no longer was dribbling the ball up for a while? Like, they took it away because his decision making. He even said my bad. He just literally didn't have the presence of mind to know where his foot was. He's not used to that role, but that can't happen in a close game against Power 4 teams. It's almost an argument they have a true point guard that can to know where everybody is either, regardless of position. Do they have that guy? That again goes back to the roster. And we do have fans here saying, I had 4 step on the sideline and the turn or end line turnovers. 13 for 37 from 2-point range is a killer. Yeah, and that was said 3 or 4 times in here. Eagle staff looked at, and then this is interesting. I guess I'll ask you about this. Because somebody said Eagle staff was the focus early on, and then he went 0 for 5 and they went away from him, and that's when Honor Huff became the focus of the offense for the coaches. Do you agree that it looked like for you that they opened up the game thinking Eagle staff would be the top guy, and then they had to rewrite the script a little bit because he was once again cold?
I would agree. I think I would agree with that. I mean, he did take a lot of shots early. I mean, he was 0 for 5 before many guys got even 1 shot. And I think he went 0 for 6 because he got fouled and then he made the free throw.
Okay.
And his first make was shot number 7 with the 3-pointer. And that turned out to be his only make from the floor tonight. So I can definitely see that being the case where he was shooting a heavy volume to start that one. And, you know, it was a situation where you got away with it because the defense was stepping up and Ohio State was missing shots. Ohio State had a bad night from 3-point range and they shot a pretty heavy volume from there. So I don't know, but that's the thing. Like, with all of those
they were
factors
4
combined,
for 21, 4 for 21, and to
Yeah.
win a game when you're shooting 4 for 21 from long range in this modern basketball is insane. I can't imagine that happening too often in any level. 4 for 21 from 3 and winning.
Yeah,
But they did.
I mean, there's just too many things that lined up that should have had WVU winning this game, and
Yeah.
you know, you can think like personal player decisions, you can think coaching decisions. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe WVU, and I'm not saying this should have been the case, I would need to go back and see it again. On that play where Jasper Floyd was called for that offensive foul, maybe there should have been a timeout because they had one. It felt very similar. Obviously not exactly the same to the Clemson game because you were only down one, or what was the game? The game was tied. Yeah, the game was tied instead of being down by 3. But you had the ball across half court with 5 seconds left. You could easily take a timeout and draw something up, draw up a play, and give Honor Huff a look in that situation. But I can also really understand the decision to let them play and keep going downhill with the game tied. And also, let's just be honest, that was a terrible call.
I was going
Like
to ask you your thoughts on the
that was
call
a
because
terrible call.
that almost ruined the game as well. I mean, for West
Yeah.
Virginia, yeah.
No, there were a lot of calls I didn't agree with, but really, like, there's too many lapses on WVU to blame this on the refs. I'm
Oh
not a
yeah,
believer in blaming games on the refs, but like
yeah.
at the end of the day, if you don't miss a shot, you're going to win the game, right? So,
And
uh,
also, like, yes, there's a lot of West Virginia fans there, and it's better than being in Columbus. But you're in Ohio. You're in Ohio. So you're going to be influenced by the crowd, maybe regardless of who the refs are. And it was a star-studded ref crew, by the way. You can't really ask for better resumes on who was there. But I do think that was a bad call. The broadcasters agreed with it eventually, but I do think it was a bad call. But when you blow a 16-point lead
exactly.
to a team that you really, by the metrics, are better than, you can't blame the referees.
Nope.
And you had multiple overtimes as well, and it still appeared that the it did not appear here. And this again goes back to coaching. And I will add the caveat that I do think Ross Hodge is a good coach. I do think the staff is made up of good coaches, and I'm not there. No, in no way are they getting fired here in year one, no matter what happens. Nor am I saying that's even reasonable because Ren Baker just doesn't want to have another coaching search. You're in year one of this. It's year freaking one. It's not his fault of what happened the last few years, even though the fan base is starving to get back in the tournament. And they should. They have 31 appearances. That's top 20 all time. They deserve to be in the NCAA tournament again. They should certainly be there. They got used to being there. But again, that's not all on Ross Hodge. With all of that said, not only do you not get a timeout when you need it, because it almost felt a little bit like the players and Ross Hodge thought that was a bad call, and then they were emotionally down from it for another 30 seconds, like the fans. Like they got it. They can't let that happen to them. And then it also appeared, which goes back to coaching, that, and maybe his hands were tied because nobody else emerged, but is it fair to say, Luke, that it didn't feel like there was much in terms of adjustments from the coaching staff? That once the defense of Ohio State keyed in on Honor Huff and realized he's going to be the guy, he's red hot, he can carry them on his own, and they just put two guys at him almost at the dribble once they got over half court, whether he had the ball or not, as the point or shooting guard, that there was no adjustment from Hodge and WVU. There was nothing to try to get anybody else involved. The only plays that worked from that point on were when Honor Huff would basically dance around, run out the whole shot clock, and then find Obioha or somebody down below. It worked a few, and then once he stepped out of bounds. But there was no outside shots from anybody else outside of, Lorient took a couple and from Fields on a regular basis. It was 90% of the time Huff would try. He'd face double coverage. There'd be nobody else there. There would not be a play for anybody else there. He'd try again, and they would end up turning the ball over. Like, is it fair to argue that the second half overtime adjustments from the coaching staff after Huff got swarmed weren't there?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I don't even know if it's that even as much as it was. I'm not sure the offense is wanting to get is really getting the looks that they want, or if the offense is being ran to its full potential. Ross Hodge has talked about wanting this offensive system to be one and where they can get downhill a lot and attack the rim, and it just doesn't feel like they're doing that. They definitely didn't do it against Wake Forest, and there were times where it didn't feel that way tonight. It felt like a lot of east-west motion, a lot of handoffs, a lot of screens, a lot of dancing around outside the perimeter, like you mentioned, and that resulted
Yeah,
in a lot of three-pointers, which were being made by Honor Huff. But
right.
Honor Huff also hit a couple floaters. I mean, shoot, they tried to get him a layup to end the first
Which
overtime
was
period.
nice to see, actually, that he wasn't just living off the 3-pointer. You can't do
Yeah,
that. So that was actually a
yeah.
good. I do actually think that's a positive for his game, that he was willing at times to say, "Okay, I can't just take a 3-pointer every single
No,
possession.
for sure.
I'm going to take what's coming to me." That was a positive, even
Yeah,
though it's
and I mean
obviously
it was
yeah,
well defended. He had to put up a tough shot, and then you
yeah,
go into the second overtime. And Jasper Floyd went in there, made some floaters, and Brennan Lorient tried to get downhill as well. I just think that the downhill drive all too often turns into just a post up from Jasper Floyd or Brennan Lorient. And it's not as bad if it's a post up if there's something happening off the ball. right? But there's not.
Yeah.
Guys will move slightly to get open, but in terms of off-ball screens, in terms of passing cuts, there's not a lot going on there. And that's just not a recipe for winning offense, especially whenever you're about to step into Big 12 play. I think you have to take the next couple weeks, try to implement some new offensive systems. I would keep doing whatever you're doing on defense, run whatever defensive drills that you
Yeah.
want, but also try to get to a point on offense where you can run some different looks and you can make adjustments, because there just haven't been enough adjustments on the offensive side throughout this game, but let alone the entire season.
Yeah. And the only defense is, and I don't know if this is a defense because this goes to roster building from the offseason that was viewed as a positive and a big win of the offseason by many, including Russ Hodge, saying he thought the offseason was great. But either the roster building's the problem or the adjustments are the problem. Because if you want to defend the adjustments, you could argue that kind of what you were a little bit were saying, like, what can you do if nobody else is hitting any shots on any regular, consistent basis? So how can you possibly adjust? You can't sit there and scheme anything for Lorien, Fields, certainly not Eagle staff. Granted, he didn't play much in the overtimes, if at all, actually, or
I don't
anybody
think he
else.
did at all.
Yeah, I don't think he did at all, or anybody else at all, because nobody but Huff was making shots on a regular basis, even though there were a couple hit by others. But it was really just Huff on a regular basis. You got to scheme for him. But then that's a roster issue. You got to have somebody else. And I mean, this might just be the simplest thing, but this would almost be, fitting and almost funny in a way. It almost feels like that by Eagle staff being so ineffective on a consistent basis offensively, now to the point that he is losing minutes because he's also now lagging a little bit defensively in 2 of the last 3 games, certainly against power competition. That based on all of that and not getting the full effort from Eagle staff or the best player you can get in Eagle staff, that this team just doesn't have a shot. It's almost like they built the team that it has to run through Eagle staff. And if Eagle staff is going to be this version of Eagle staff, they're done. That's almost what it looks like. I mean, unless Honor Huff turns into, again, Allen Iverson out there. And he almost did it this game. But unless he does this every game, it does not appear, and we have more from the fans here for a positive, holding opponents on a low 3-point conversion is what we need to do. The defense, for the most part, looked good. And I do think that's fair as a positive because, again, Ohio State was horrendous from 3. They've been good defending teams from 3 most of the year. They've been a good defensive team most of the year. But they had no answer for anyone down low or in the paint. And you can't have no answer for anybody in the paint in the Big 12. Yep. I mean, yeah, teams want to hit threes, and if you don't hit threes, usually you lose in this era of basketball, whether it be college or the NBA. But when they play West Virginia, maybe you just try to send your big down through the paint and then see what happens, because West Virginia can't defend it. Teams that live in the paint could kill the Mountaineers. So that's an issue here. This team was built around the ideal of being a ball dominant scorer. I'm assuming, I don't know which player he's mentioning there, but maybe Eagle staff. Again, there's nobody here who's dominant as a scorer except for Honor Huff. There's others who had good games, and Eagle staff had a good game a couple games ago. But what you do against Coppin State is not the same against Eagle staff. Okay, yeah, it looked like, again, and maybe it's fair to say this team was built for Eagle staff to be the ball dominant scorer and Huff to be number 2 and everyone else to kind of be role players. And if that cannot happen, they are dead, because you cannot change this roster middle of the season. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, post-game show, more of a rant session here. Not exactly full-on broadcast quality, but this is more for the fans to vent as well, and we just had to do this after that game, figuring there was going to be engagement, and it's there for sure. Again, West Virginia Sports Now for Luke's game recap, and all of our coverage. You can also find us all over social media. We'll stay here for a little bit longer, I guess. He's not playing to par and is supposed to be the guy. He's hurting us bad. I guess I'll ask you this, and we talked about it a little bit on Mountaineer Report, which, to plug, you can find everywhere you get your podcast, and it's still very relevant for basketball, football, and whatever else is going on throughout Mountaineer Nation. We talked about Eagle staff being benched recently, then turning it around. We talked about how Ross Hodge defended him vehemently early in the season when he was underachieving and he was not scoring and not even taking shots. Here's another game that he doesn't hit field goals at all and has 5 points and then ends up losing minutes. If he's going to keep on losing minutes because the defensive game is now waning, he's not even able to take enough shots, let alone hit those shots. And even when he takes shots, he goes 0 for 6, and then he doesn't take another one. Or he only takes 2 or 3 in games and ends up with a couple points. He's only had that 1 20-point game, but again against lower competition. If this is him, and we are now into mid-December, what do you do with him in Big 12 play? Do you keep trying because that's the way you built the team, or else you might as well quit the year? Or do you got to give him 20 minutes when everyone else has double, or make him a bench player, or what? I mean, you're already paying him and he's already on the team. And I mean, this is not the NBA where you can put together a trade here in the middle of the year and ship him elsewhere and bring somebody in. He's there.
Yeah, that's what's complicated, right? Is because if you have faith in him, you want to show him that you have faith in him, right? So unless it's for his defensive ability or defensive effort, you don't want to take him out of the game, because that sends the message to him that you're losing faith in him as an offensive player,
Right.
which, I mean, whether or not they should, I don't know. I think the main problem is the hesitation. Which was still there tonight, by the way. There were some points wherever he hesitated, and he probably should have just catch and shot. But I think that's the main problem, is what kind of message are you sending to him throughout? And, he he talked about, like, at Wake Forest, he said the message was he knows why he didn't get as many minutes as he would have liked. Move on. I wonder if that's the same message here. I haven't been able to get a hold of the post-game presser yet to check it out, but I
don't believe it was sent yet. I feel like they're not rushing to send that video. I'm sure we're gonna get it, but
if they're there, they didn't record it at a. They didn't record.
Well, they're there. I mean, I saw Messerly on. I mean, he was there. I saw Messerly.
Oh
yeah, they were there. I mean, maybe they didn't they didn't record it because Messerly's not recording it, obviously. But I, who knows? But I mean, he spoke to who was there. And tip of the cap for college media, because I know U92 was there. They might have been able to just fire off questions, because a lot of media were not able to make this trip because they were snowed in, which we can, include ourselves in. So who knows what they asked? We'll have to watch and consume that. And what an opportunity for those kids if that was the case. But Ross Hodge talked to somebody, and I hope they asked some questions if it was just them, but I'm sure there were others there. But yeah, who knows? Because I'm sure you're going to get more from him this coming week or whenever he talks next, in more of a sit down, kind of give you 25 to half hour after a game like this. I'd imagine it's going to be a short thing. It's not going to be belaboring the point too much, but it'll be interesting because he clearly doesn't like talking about Eagle staff, and he's going to be talking about Eagle staff a lot, because now I think it's fair. What do you do with Eagle staff's minutes? One question. Another question is, did you bench him again because the minutes were reduced, or was this just somehow the game flowed, or was it a legit benching? He kind of admitted to it being a legit benching a couple games ago. And then the third question is, and somehow to figure out a way to ask this, but can this team flow the way you built this team with Eagle staff being this inconsistent? I don't think so. I'm sure he'll try to answer it in a way to not admit that, but I don't. But yeah, you don't want to kill the kid's confidence.
No,
and
exactly.
he is a scorer, so you figure that a scorer is going to score eventually, no matter what the competition is. But he's not taking enough shots. He doesn't look confident out there at all. Like, Honor Huff takes shots, and he gives a confident vibe that he's going to hit all these damn shots, whether they're good or bad. That vibe is not there with Eagle staff. I don't know how you fix that. I mean, that's almost like a mental thing, and I don't want to get in his brain and accuse that, but that's almost what it looks like.
No, I think there's absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to say, he did mention in his last presser after the win against. Oh shoot, I can't remember who they played last week. But he did mention that they, brought up. He brought up
the Coppin State. Is that the game you're talking about?
Was that Coppin State? I mean,
I was asking.
State feels like way longer ago. Yeah, whatever their last game was before this.
Right. Yeah.
So
no, I mean,
so they he did mention, there's outside noise, kind of let some of that get to him. But,
Oh,
internal noise,
Little Rock is what it was.
Little
Yeah,
Rock, yes, yeah.
yeah.
But,
Same
internal
difference.
noise,
Same
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
Yeah.
Internal noise can be just as loud when it comes to stuff like that, and your
Right.
confidence takes a hit. And,
Right.
I really, for his sake, I hope that he learns to overcome whatever's there, because he is a good player. And I
Yeah.
think that I think it does suck to see somebody who his final season in college is going the way that it is in terms of
Yeah.
his ability being called into question by fans. And not saying that it isn't I'm not going to say that the fans shouldn't have reservations about his play so far, but it is, you definitely want to see him have success. And I think fans expected the 1-2 punch with him being 1A and Huff being 1B.
Yeah.
And we saw that at Little Rock and didn't see it tonight. Haven't really seen it against any real quality competition for this team. So in the long run, it's going to be really curious to see. I think somebody mentioned it in the comments, but what really is scratching my mind now is that Amir Jenkins only got 10 minutes of play tonight.
Yeah. That's another
That's kind of
question.
shocking. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, because he is that downhill presence. He's a defensive presence.
Yeah, in
I
this
mean,
game,
just
it
Jet,
feels like he could have made sense, especially when you're
yeah,
just looking for baskets at times, right? I mean, they made
yeah,
some of those three when they were just chucking threes, but you could argue some of those possessions in which they chucked threes and made those threes. Certainly, the Huff shot there that I do think was a two, but some fans are probably going to argue that it was a three, which then we'd still be playing basketball if that was a three. By the way, we still would be
yeah.
playing. But I think it was
Triple
a two.
overtime was very much on the table at one
Right.
point.
I mean, if that was overturned to a three, we would be playing basketball right now, or else we'd be just firing this up. Maybe just ended 10 minutes ago. But nonetheless, I think it was a two. But you could argue because that's the perfect example, actually, Luke. That's the perfect example of a play that looked like it was dead in arrival. It looked like there was not an answer. It looked like the coach. I don't know what was drawn up there, but it looked like that could not at all have been what was drawn up from any veteran coach. And then Huff pulls a shot out of his where and ends up it all works out. But like that was literally as he released the ball, I was saying, no. Like
Yeah,
what are you doing? And then it goes in, and then you might look like an idiot, but in all reality, I cannot imagine any coach is not going to watch that film sitting down with Honor Huff and be like, are you Steph Curry? Oh, I don't think so. Let's not do that shot again. There was time on the clock. There was other, like, you got to rely on your teammates a little bit there, even if they're struggling. That was one, especially in that scenario, that maybe try to get somebody downhill, try to do something in the paint. They tried it a little bit at times, but there was a lot of players who were open down there because everyone was over with Huff. If he could
yeah.
find somebody more often, they might have hit some more of those easy baskets and more of those shots. But yeah,
Yeah,
I do
and that
also
is where
see
the
a
size component comes into it,
yeah,
right?
there
I
you
mean,
go.
if you're a
Yeah.
taller guard, and I mean, it's nothing against him. That's just the way it
That's his
is.
size. He's
But
small. Yeah.
but that's just another reason that you can't just throw the ball in his hands every possession and pray.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's
That's what
just
it
not.
looked like. That's what I'm
I mean,
saying. Like
that's what it looks. Yeah,
I can't. I'm not. I'd love to see what was on the board because that's what it looked like. I don't know what was on the whiteboard, but that absolutely is what it looked like here. And I think we should give him 35 minutes. Assuming figuring talking to Eagle staff here, I think we should give him 35 minutes next game against the bad team. Let him make mistakes. Let him play. See what happens. Then send him home for a week to chill with family during the break. And they will have a break after that game, and then you
yeah,
go into the new year, and maybe they can get their mind right because they have that big game you mentioned right away with Iowa State, and then really, outside of a few teams, every game in the Big 12 is basically big and separate from even the quality, quad 1, quad 2 games in conference. I mean, they're almost all quad 1, really. They need to just get the wins. They can't afford to drop any of them. I mean, if you would have won this game and beat Clemson, you'd have a cushion that you can get upset a couple times and also win some big games, then mix it together and at least be on the bubble like last year. Last year, they had some big wins, top 5, top 10 wins, also had some miscues, and they were at least on the bubble. You take away the miscues, maybe they're in, but those are always going to happen throughout a season. But now there's no wiggle room. They cannot lose any games. They are supposed to win the rest of the season, or else
right.
there is literally no reason to even watch on Selection Sunday. Thoughts on that, though? And I guess, yes, I agree. Might as well let him cook and give him minutes and sink or swim. You're probably going to win in your next game out. But if Eagle Staff goes out there and throws up 20 plus points and is hitting every shot like he did against Little Rock, is that giving you really any confidence, Luke? What does that say? What does that plan even do? Because we've seen it, and then against power competition, we get this again.
Well, I mean, I guess my main question would be what is the alternative?
Right?
I
Yeah.
think to a degree you kind of have to let it ride with Eagle Staff. Eagle Staff played 4 minutes in the second half and you still blew the lead. It's like I
Right.
what do you do with that? And I mean, if you're gonna look at it from a purely analytical standpoint, the team technically was better with him out on the court, right? And you can say it's his off ball play, his defensive play. He had a couple. He had at least one steal that was really eye catching in this game that came in the second half. But
Yeah.
I coming when it comes down to it, I mean, you take him off the court, and you're also that's when the lead is slipping away. And
Yeah.
I think there is still truth to the statement that he brings defenders with him when he's out there on the court, and he still
Yeah.
has that center of gravity that Ross Hodge likes to talk about between him and Honor
Yeah.
Huff, and
He
they
does.
do open it up for the guys in the middle of the court. I still think that there's merit to leave him out there. I don't think it's time to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to playing Trace and Eagle staff, but and ultimately, I think getting reps and making shots is going to be the only way that this confidence issue sorts itself out with him.
Yeah. I mean, as frustrating as it is, and I'm sure it's even more frustrating for fans here than us, but as frustrating as it is to watch him, because again, it's hot and cold. Fine against lower level power four, it's this. It's inconsistent, it's missing shots, it's being scared to take shots, and then it's losing minutes. But you're also right in there is literally no other option. Like if they get to a point that they are so upset at Eagle Staff's play, or they start believing what I'm saying and they're that down on him, they're done. Like if they get to a point where Eagle Staff is now not giving you if they have to bench him again or he's not giving you the defensive effort and they just do not believe he's going to get it done this year because he has been at a lower level and it does suck that this is where the spotlight was going to be on him. This spotlight's on him brighter than any of the other, certainly North Dakota, anywhere else. And he's not getting it done and it's going to make up and cover up what he did before. But if that's where you are as a staff, where now you're reducing his minutes on a regular basis, you're done. Because again, this is not the NBA. You cannot add somebody else and just say, okay, Eagle staff is no longer the answer. So now we're going to sign somebody who's available as a free agent, or we're going to trade him for draft picks, or, that doesn't exist. Like, that doesn't exist. That's what Zach Alley complained about with the football team. Like, we have all these injuries in the NFL. You can go sign somebody. You can work a trade. The Cowboys worked a trade and they end up winning games. They're back in the race when they're out of it before. What did they do? They worked a trade. There's no trades that exist in college sports. And maybe they should, because it's basically pro sports. They're all getting paid. But I don't know how that would work logistically, obviously. But without a trade, there's you can't just give up on Eagle Staff, because if you do, the only way you can give up on Eagle Staff, Luke, here's the only caveat. You got to have somebody else step up to be at where he was supposed to be, which maybe means you got to get more from Lorient than you're even getting now. And it was certainly enough in this game from him, but you got to get more from him, more from Fields. You certainly got to play Jenkins more. Obioha got to give you back what he gave you against Pitt every game. If those things don't happen, you can't give up on Eagle Staff. Like I don't see another option. Do you want to see more of Chance Moore? That's brought up a lot here in the chat. We're probably going to end this post-game show here soon. Do you want to see more of Chance Moore? Or do you like him in his current role?
I really like Chance Moore. I think he adds a really level of diversity to this offense in terms that he just gets the ball and he goes downhill immediately. And you're not really getting that from a lot of other guys. I mean, Amir Jenkins does that, but again, he only
Yeah.
got 10 minutes tonight. And also, Chance Moore, I think, is a much better scorer because he also has the threat of getting to the rim and throwing it away with the dunk. And Amir Jenkins will probably get to the point where he can do that, but Chance Moore, I mean, he'll throw it down with authority, right? And he also, he can shoot it from the outside some. He's a very good defensive presence. Like you mentioned, he had a lot of boards early, and I'd have to imagine that he's probably the leading guard in terms of boards per game when it comes to this season. I don't have the
Yeah.
stats in front of me to check that out right now, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I really do like Chance Moore. I think he would operate as a very good sixth man for this team. And if they ever feel like throwing something
Ideally.
at the wall and see if yeah,
Yeah.
feel like if they want to throw something at the wall and see if it sticks, maybe start Chance Moore instead of Eagle Staff. But Chance Moore
Yeah.
also gets the benefit of going in there, and I think he gets easier trips to the rim whenever he's playing against guys who have already been out there for five,
That's
eight
true.
minutes. So,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he's
I, I,
playing
w- I
against
would al-
yeah.
yeah, I would almost argue just leave it as it is and try to help instill that confidence in Eagle Staff. As frustrating as an answer as that probably is to Mountaineer fans, I just don't know how much you want to shake up in an offense that's already unstable and very much inconsistent. So
I guess the
that's the
counter is
question they're going to have to ask themselves.
I mean, I guess the counter is yes, it can get worse because, as I was about to ask, can it get worse? Yes, it can get worse. We've seen the Eilert season. You can start losing to these
Yeah.
these bye games, the non-power 4 teams. Yes, I mean, look at Pitt. They've lost multiple of those games. It can get worse. But in all reality, if you're not going to make the NCAA tournament, what is the difference of not making it with 15 wins or 12? There is no difference at all. I mean, we're not looking at Huggins going for a wins record here. This is a guy early in his career. It does not matter. So maybe at this point, when you still maybe have some semblance of a shot just off moving up in Ken Palm, maybe it's either try something new or just keep doing the same thing and then have it be insane? Like, is it the definition of insanity to just go out there and keep doing the same thing when it's not working against Power 4 competition? And the problem is, again, the last game of this calendar year is going to prove nothing to these fans because it's not a Power 4,
Right.
it's not a power opponent. So you could have Eagle Staff score 30, you can keep the same lineup. I wonder, actually, on the flip side, if you have a team that you'll probably beat no matter what you do, is that a game to try a different lineup? Because you can afford to have miscues and maybe still win. I know Ken Palm matters, but you know what I mean? If you're going to move Chance Moore into the starting lineup, because I agree what you were saying is also true. His numbers look good. He looks good to the eye test, but he's also doing it against the bench players. He's not playing the other team's top guys. If he played the top guys, maybe he will have, harder defense, harder schemes. Teams will figure him out more. It might be harder for him, but you could learn that against a team that you probably would beat anyway. Figure it out. You can't learn it against Iowa State or you're going to lose by 40.
Yeah, I think the main caveat to that for me would be that they just had a game where they looked like they were at their offensive potential against one of those teams with Little Rock, right? Like Honor Huff had 24,
Yeah.
Eagle Staff had 25 or 23. It's just how honest is it? How
That's what I
honest are
mean.
those games and how telling are those games? I don't really know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could try that, see if it works, but I think you have to take it with a grain of salt when it comes to, how it's going to translate to Iowa State in Ames, right? So, y- that that's a question. I would almost stick with the safe route and do keep trying. And as much as,
Yeah.
fans probably don't want to hear that, but I see a real risk in you're
Yeah.
rolling the dice and, I guess high risk, high reward, but you're running the risk of shaking things up a little bit too much to where it messes up any semblance of
Yeah.
flow that you already had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and fans are going to look at the record. So as much as 15 wins doesn't make any difference versus 12, the people will care. I mean, it will look worse. But and it's early in the season still, even though it feels like this season's been 2 years long. But but it's still early in the season here. It's just hard to imagine. I mean, that Iowa State game looks like that could really be a really bad blowout loss that puts you back into 80 Ken Palm. Or it'd be a West Virginia thing to somehow upset them or get a gigantic staple win. And then you're going to have fans sitting there and saying, which would be very valid, imagine to add that to beating Clemson and beating Ohio State and those wins because they shouldn't have blown those games. And then imagine if you have it all put together and wrapped up into a bow for the holiday season, you'd be a ranked team, which is where this team is accustomed to being year in and year out under Huggins and even Beeline before, and really even under Catlett for a lot of those years, and certainly Jerry West, and certainly back in the 40s. And I mean, it's again like there was a consistent lineage, and yes, there were a lot of bad years mixed in, but there was a consistent lineage for the most part of being a relevant team further into the season than it's been the last several years. Last year, they should have made the tournament. They didn't. This year, it doesn't even look like they're on the bubble unless they figure something out. And I guess as we kind of close things, because I feel like the chat's going off the rails a little bit here, I do want to reiterate that there's no way to blame the refs for this at all. There was a couple bad calls. You blow a 16-point lead to a team that you're better than. You have a player cooking. They're having players in foul trouble. It's not like they have Bob Huggins over there on the sideline either. I mean, the coaches, it's pretty even. This was an even situation. Everyone's a roller coaster ride. It's pretty even all across. And you're up 16 and you blow that game. You can't not be sitting here saying the refs, and nor is Ross Hodge going to do that. But way too many fans are doing it. There is no way. If the refs got together before the game and said, how can we screw the Mountaineers? That wasn't working out when West Virginia was up 16. They were up 16 and still lost. They had leads in overtime and still lost. Doesn't work. So
Nope.
This is just a bad loss. It's just a bad loss. It's a bad loss. And yeah, I guess metric-wise, it's not a bad loss, but it's a bad loss if you watched it. I'm not sure if Ken Pomeran watched this game. Ken Pomeran might move him up because he thinks Ohio State's a good team, and maybe that they're even, and it was in Cleveland. But hell, if Ken Pomeran watched this game, I think he'd be really concerned about the consistent offense. If there's a number 2 scorer, even maybe a little bit of the defense against bigs, some adjustments. I don't know how they move up, but they did. And, we'll see what Ken Pomeran does after the next game, because he's probably not even going to have to watch it, and it's going to be irrelevant. And then you get into the Iowa State game, and it's just a wait and see. I mean, that could go really, really bad, or maybe that could jumpstart things. And, the broadcast, they did say here in Cleveland that the winner of this game, maybe it leapfrogs them and they get momentum. And unfortunately, West Virginia not the winner. So we'll see if they can turn the corner. And also, we say this all the time. You got to check in on the Buckeyes now and see what it does to them, because you got to kind of root for them. I mean, if they end up with a really bad year like Pitt, then you're once again, worse off metric wise. So you need Ohio State to be good and can carry this on. Luke Blain, Mike Asti, that'll do it for this post-game edition here of the show. After the West Virginia Mountaineers fall 89-88 in double overtime, a heartbreaking loss here in the middle of the holiday season. One more until the calendar flips 2026, and then it is a behemoth to open up Big 12 play. And the out-of-conference schedule, it's going to end. It's going to end without any quality victories for this team. That'll do it.